Who do you view as the favorite right now in the NFC East?
There you go. I would if you really asked me to wager a milkshake on it, I would still go with Dallas because I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to play at that level once we get into the season. I need to see a step up from him. I don't know if it's there. It could be. It could very well be. We'll just have to wait. I have such a trust and belief in Dak and this Cowboy team. And, yes, there are questions on that offensive line. But Kellen Moore has shown the ability to find the right answers here over his years as a play caller. And I really like this defense, as everybody does. You know, when you line up with guys who are playmakers like they have, how can you not like them? Now, I think the schedule here at the start is a really tough one to throw out of the gate with a Tampa team that, as we've talked about, people love so much. And then you follow it up with Cincinnati, who not only we saw in the Super Bowl, but I had in their wild card game before that, did a big study on them at the end of last year, and I think that's a very talented roster. So you could still say, you know, Dallas is pretty good, but they're 0-2 with 2 high-profile losses. So if you really made me wager, I would still lean Dallas, but I think one of the massive games for the Cowboys and one of the big games of this season is going to be their game that we have on a Sunday night in Philadelphia. That's going to be huge. The road games in this division, I think, are going to be very big this year for these teams. And a Washington and Giant team that I think will be improved. Washington on the offensive side a bit better with Carson. And the Giants, I think Daboll as the head coach is going to have their offense a little bit better than it was last year. Well, last year was bad. I think they'll be a better offense this year.
Mike Tirico joined us here at 105 through the Fan. Jerry was on with us, yesterday, and obviously he's on weekly with us.
You guys make news every week that he's on, so love it.
Colin Cowherd had made the comparison that Jerry and the Cowboys are kind of turning into Al Davis and the Raiders at the end of Al's tenure. Is that a fair comparison, or is that a little bit too much of a stretch?
I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but I see the point. Look, I think the desperation to win is something that has become not just, a few high-profile maverick owners, if you will, as they get a little bit on in years. I think it's an every-year feeling in the NFL. I mean, who builds anymore? Who says, hey, we've got a 5-year program to win? I think that's yesterday's news. So I think Dallas has an aggressiveness about it that has been maybe addressed earlier than other people had addressed theirs. But I don't see that necessarily as the case. Dallas accumulates some good football players, not shiny toys that maybe towards the end of their career, which was kind of a little bit of the end of the nominal Al Davis run. So I wouldn't necessarily make that apples for apples comparison.
Mike, could you just give us kind of a network TV behind the scenes view of just how much more popular the Cowboys are, like what the gap is in terms of the following, or when you guys are doing a Cowboys game, the numbers that you look at, or the feedback in terms of having them as the number one draw? Like what is that like from your end?
Yeah, I know the Cowboys rate at a higher ratio, let's say, than most teams of their level of play. And I'll give you a point. If you have any other team that's won 4 playoff games in 26 years, you're not going to have them on the maximum in prime time. They're not going to be a 5-appearance primetime team. That's the max in the NFL. And they're not going to be on Sunday Night Football 3 times, which is the max. But the Dallas Cowboys deliver over and over. It is legacy. It is fan base built, obviously, in the 70s and 80s, carried to the next generation in the 90s. And look, I grew up in New York. I have relatives who live on Long Island. And my cousin-in-law, the older guy, and there's 2 kids, one's in college, one's in high school, they live for the Cowboys. They live for the Cowboys. I brought them down to Arlington for a game. It was one of the highlights of their life. They loved it. And these are guys who are 45 minutes from MetLife, and they can go to the Giants game. They don't walk around with Daniel Jones jerseys. They got a Micah Parsons jersey for Christmas and loved it and wear it all the time. So I can't give you the ratings nerd, like here's the rating in Montana when the Cowboys play compared to the Bills. But I can just tell you tangentially and anecdotally, the Cowboys play at a higher factor than almost every other team in the league. especially one that doesn't have a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. And it's something that I think has just been the long-term success, and everything in Arlington, everything there feels like an event. And I think that gets through the TV. Everybody wants to know, hey, other than AT&T, what are your favorite stadiums? So they don't even ask, is that one of your favorite stadiums? They just know it. And that doesn't happen elsewhere.
And now you're adding a member of America's team on y'all's coverage. Talk about the addition of Jason Garrett, whether how different is Jason? We're used to robotic Jason, not making headlines, classy face of the franchise. You have interviewed him countless times behind the scenes. Now what's it going to be like, you think, working with him?
Yeah, I haven't spent as much time with Jason because he's been with the studio group yet. But we did hang for a bit in Canton, Ohio, and talked a little bit about TV and about the business, and talked a little bit about Notre Dame, because Jason's going to be doing the Notre Dame games with Jack Collinsworth, doing the play-by-play, and I've done that for the last 6 years. So I was able to share just some stuff about the Notre Dame experience with Coach. I think Jason and Tony Dungy together, they're going to be different, because you're not going to have people yelling at you, right? But you have really smart people telling you why. And here's why I think that's important on the Football Night in America show that I just did for the last 5 or 6 years. That show is a hard one to do, because you need to answer the question as to why it happened without having a whole day to listen to post-game press conferences, hear from coaches, look at film, go back and review tape. I can sit there Monday at 3, and a lot of folks can look very smart because they have time to go back and look at the video of the game. We sit there and watch all the games at once, and you need somebody who can dissect it right away. And Jason has that ability, and Tony has that ability. So I think, before you get to my hair's on fire, I'm the most angry person in the world, I want to make this argument, it's nice to know what happened and why it happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really good. And I think Jason's perspective as well as a play caller and a head coach just out of the league is going to help a lot with our show. And I think he's going to be good. I really do. There's nothing that gets you ready for TV and say something of significance in a 12 to 15-second soundbite like being a head coach of one of the major franchises in the NFL. And I knew with John Gruden, when I worked with John, but he was much better because he'd get up there and say something in a soundbite, and that was what he did in press conferences. Tony's the same way, and I think Jason's going to be the same way. And I think Jason is going to be really enjoyable in the booth doing the Notre Dame games. I think he's going to bring something to that that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that just as much as him on Football Night on Sundays.